have that conversation.
Yeah, so,
Is he down in Juneau now?
yeah.
Yeah. That's where we visited him.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Good morning. Nice to be out on a cool morning, although it's awfully beautiful out there, so we don't want any complaints about the weather. We live in Alaska and we love it. So, I am pleased to be able to host a roundtable here this morning focused on the aftermath, if you will, of the tsunami that hit Japan last March, and to try to better understand what we may anticipate coming our way. We read reports in the news of the debris that is out there. Don't really know as much as we may want. There's a lot of speculation, and my hope this morning is to hear from some of those who are spending the time and the energy better understanding what impacts we may see here on Alaska's coastline, and to provide some better information to Alaskans and to those who are interested. We have a good panel here this morning to provide that information, but before I introduce the panel, I would like to introduce Mr. Hideo Fujita, who is the consul here in Alaska, consulate office for Japan. And he has asked to say just a few brief words this morning, and I would like to welcome you, Mr. Fujita, and ask you to please come to the microphone and give us your greetings this morning.
Thank you very much, Senator Lisa Murkowski, for arranging this meeting to address a very important issue, many Alaskan concerns and interest, and also it's a very good opportunity to give information on what is going on within this issue. And I like to say just three things at first, because of the gravity of this issue and the so many ministries involved in this issue. We have already established expert interagency team in Ocean Policy headquarters in Cabinet Secretariat, and they try to get more information and exchange information with experts of the United States. And also, I like to touch the issue of the possibilities of radioactive contamination of debris, and we think that possibility is very small because the tsunami happened on March 11th on around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the timing of, we notice the leveling up of radioactive activity is early morning is the next day, so there is some time gap, and also the radioactive material we can think of it as cesium. It's soluble, melt into the water, and also the another substances, radioactive iodine, which we understand the amount will be reduced almost half in 8 days. So I think those substances already reduced to undetectable level, even when those things can be transferred, carried to the debris material. And also, I like to touch the amount of debris. We don't know exactly yet how much debris are floating in the Pacific Ocean, our Ministry of Environment estimates that to 20 million tons of debris produced. But not all the debris are not floating, because most of them are left over on shore of Japan, and also some portion of debris which are pushed out into the water may, I think, sunk into the bottom of the sea. And if I can give any more comment to them, I'd like to speak much more. But thank you very much, Lisa, for giving me the opportunity to speak at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fujita. Appreciate that. And we recognize that even though it has been approaching a year since the disaster in Japan, that the losses of human life, the damage, the injury, that there is still much being rebuilt in Japan, that families are still suffering, and please know that the efforts from our country to Japan to help in the aftermath of that tsunami still are ongoing, and we are there with you in supporting those families that have suffered such loss. With that, I'd like to introduce the members of the panel here this morning. To my left, we have Dave Gaudet, who is the Marine Debris Coordinator with the Marine Conservation Alliance Foundation. He will be presenting they will be discussing a new monitoring effort in Alaska that is funded by the Marine Conservation Alliance Foundation. Next to me is Peter Murphy, who is the Alaska Coordinator for the NOAA Marine Debris Program. He'll be speaking to what we know about the tsunami debris and the NOAA monitoring program. To my right is Kristen Ryan, who is the Environmental Health Director for the state of Alaska within the Department of Environmental Conservation, and she will be speaking to the state position on risk assessment associated with radiation contamination and testing. And next to her we have Dr. Ward Hurlburt, who is the Chief Medical Officer, Director of Division of Public Health, State of Alaska Department of Health and Social Services. And I understand that Dr. Hurlburt will be available to address questions that might be relating to concerns over potential radiation contamination. So have folks with some big background in front of us, and I've asked them to provide us their presentation. We've got at least a full hour here, and what I intend to do is allow them to present their statements, and then I will take the opportunity to ask questions. I will be taking questions from the audience to the panelists, provided that we do have time. And I understand that the press has been invited to also offer up questions that you may have at the end as well. So with that as our schedule, why don't we just begin here on the end with you, Dave, if you'd like to kick it off. Or Peter, were you planning on going first? We'll go with Peter. I don't want to mess up the order here. We'll go with Peter.
Good morning. So thanks everybody for taking the time to come and hear more about this important issue. As Senator mentioned, Peter Murphy with the NOAA Marine Debris Program, the Alaska Coordinator, and so we're going to be talking a little bit and launching right in with the outline of what we're going to talk about. First, give a little bit of background on the tsunami issue, the tsunami itself, the debris that it created, and then talk a bit about the actions that are being done for that, both by NOAA as well as partner organizations, SCAF and others, and then also talking about what you and the public can do as well, because it's an issue where there's a lot of opportunities for public engagement. So first, some background on the tsunami event. The tsunami event, as many of you just mentioned by Mr. Fujita, was caused by a 9.0 magnitude earthquake that struck just off the coast of Japan on March 11th, 2011, which created a wave height that reached 130 feet at its maximum point. This wave inundated over 217 square miles of the Japanese coastline. To give perspective, that's about equivalent to roughly 15% of the city and borough of Anchorage being inundated with water. So a significant area. Over 15,000 people lost their lives, with many more missing, and thousands more left homeless. And I think that's an important point to draw our attention to, that this was first and foremost a human tragedy, with many, many lives impacted and lost. So before it was a marine debris question, before it was a science question, it was a human disaster. So immediately following the tsunami, the question is, well, the marine debris that was created, what is that debris? As Mr. Fujita also pointed out, the Japanese government estimated that 25 million tons of debris were created by the tsunami. However, that is the number that was for debris that was created on land, as opposed to debris that was carried out into the sea. And you can see in these two images from immediately after the tsunami, both taken the days afterwards, that meant you had debris from the water that came on shore and was left deposited on shore, such as a sailing vessel, but also you had debris that went out into the water. So one of the key questions is, what is this debris that's out there? Well, this picture illustrates the mixture of what's out there. When you have this level of water hitting an urban area, you're going to get everything and anything, for lack of a better term. So you can see in this image, there's an overturned vessel, construction debris, buoys and floats, the roof of what looks like a small building, a lot of different things. However, these individual items are going to process and weather differently over time. So they're going to spread out as they're acted upon differently by currents for objects that sit lower in the water, or for buoys or other objects that high in the water, they can be impacted more by wind and move differently. So immediately after the storm, you can see these objects in bands. So they were actually in these aggregated bands and areas. This is a photo from the U.S. Navy from 2 days after the tsunami. And this is backed up by what we can see in satellite imagery. This is from NASA and NOAA, looking at the satellites that were trained on the area immediately after the event. So you can see these bands of debris here. However, you can see these for the next several weeks after the storm, or after the tsunami, I should say. But at about 4 weeks past, you could no longer see these. It's not because the debris disappeared, it's because the debris dispersed into smaller and smaller aggregations. And so the satellite sensors couldn't pick it up. So it was still there, but with the resolution that we had, we couldn't see the objects. So the challenge then became to understand where's this debris going, and to do that we turned to modeling. So these are two different modeling outputs. This one you may have seen on our website or other websites. It's been used in the press. This is the NOAA Oscars model. And some of the images you've seen probably had two other colors, pink and purple on there, but I've taken off the last 2 years for the 4 and 5 in this image to kind of focus in on the next immediate 3-year period. But so this model from NOAA and this from the University of Hawaii, both are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to use past patterns of weather and currents in order to look at what a simulated debris object would do into the future. And when you're looking at an area as vast as the Pacific Ocean, looking out 3, 4, and 5 years, being able to predict that accurately is very difficult. It's really impossible to say where any one object is going to go and when it's going to arrive there. It's sort of, about in everyday lives, we depend on modeling for weather forecasts. The next day, it's pretty easy to trace the weather forecast, but when you get out to the 10-day forecast, you don't want to make your plans all around that. You want to check as you get closer. And additionally, these models are primarily have a lot of current in them, so they're used with currents. However, objects that sit high in the water, that are driven more by wind, have the potential to move more quickly in different directions. And this is backed up by the sightings that we've seen. So these are sightings of potential or confirmed tsunami debris. So you can see there's orientation Hawaii, obviously both Alaska and us, the west coast of North America here. These two objects, these triangles, are the two confirmed objects that we've seen, meaning that we were able to definitively trace them back to the tsunami. The way we could do that is that they were two small vessels that are actually registered to the Fukushima prefecture in Japan when the tsunami impacted. And so we could say definitively, yes, these are from the tsunami. These yellow dots represent unconfirmed sightings. Now, they're confirmed that they were debris. However, because the tsunami introduced debris that's similar to what's already in the ocean, unfortunately, it's very difficult to say that any one object is from the tsunami or isn't. And so these are sightings that we're getting from different sources. As far as shoreline sightings, these are sightings of buoys, which you saw similar buoys in the previous image. This was from Hinchinbrook Island, the entrance to Consumer Sound. This is from the Washington coastline. But these buoys do match the profile of an object that could move more quickly as it sits higher in the water, exactly more upon by wind. But because, without specific identifying markers, without sort of an individual tracer that we can say, an address or some sort of information that says where it came from, it's very difficult to say, or it's often impossible to confirm exactly where the water went. So, kind of summarizing what we know in the time since all the work we've done. First, an important point to note is that tsunami debris added to an existing problem. For those of you who go out on the Alaskan beaches, this problem shows up every day of the year as debris washes up from choices that people make, from spills, from all sorts of things. So potentially this added the same amount of debris to that problem, but this problem already exists. It is likely that much of the debris sank near shore in the first few miles offshore. This is backed up by our experiences with Hurricane Katrina and Rita and the storm surge from those, as well as the tsunami that struck Southeast Asia, as well as American Samoa in recent years. Also, debris is dispersed and not in large patches or islands or rafts. While it's easy to think of it that way, and it's natural when you see millions of tons of debris, based on oceanographic forces, debris tends to spread out because of the characteristics of the debris and how it's bonded to it. Also, the question of radioactivity. As Mr. Fujita said, the reasons why I believe this is highly unlikely, and this is the consensus of scientists we've spoken to across federal, state, and independent groups. This is both for reasons of time and the time lag from when the tsunami hit to when the radiation began to be released, but also the tsunami impacted an area of hundreds of miles of the Japanese coast, whereas Fukushima is a point source of radiation within that area. And lastly, the Coast Guard has been testing vessels and cargo that come into U.S. ports from Japan since the tsunami and has not detected any abnormal levels of radiation. And as I mentioned, two sightings confirm Japan's tsunami marine debris, but there are many more that have been unconfirmed. We're working to gather more information about those. As many of you have seen already, the computer models predictions. These are general predictions, as I mentioned earlier. The models are used as a planning tool, not to be taken as exact. But the idea that northwestern Hawaiian Islands, such as Midway, Kure Atoll, those areas would receive tsunami debris first, as early as this winter, and then moving on to the west coast of North America, which includes southeast Alaska, and then as debris enters the Alaska current and the California current would circle around. So then, what's being done? So obviously those are a lot of learnings, but what's continuing and being done? First, detection. We're trying to answer the question, where is this debris now? This image here, what you can see is, this is that same modeling, and you can actually see the contour of debris coming towards the west coast and then splitting north and south. But these white polygons are areas where we've requested and are working on getting satellite data. Working with NASA, NOAA, Department of Defense, to get data from multiple sensor types in order to be able to better detect debris. However, debris poses a different challenge in the open ocean because you're not looking for one individual object, you're not just looking for ships, you're not looking for one specific type of thing, you're looking for a lot of different things. And so we're building in other assets as well. We're working with the shipping community to voluntarily report what they see, as well as opportunistic overflights. So for Coast Guard or DoD missions that are out there, they report in what they're seeing. We're also working to improve our models by gathering experts, both that are working on the problem and those that have relevant expertise, and creating a subject matter expert group that's working to both improve the models and also inform where we decide to look for things. To give you a sense of scale, this polygon here is 1,000 kilometers by 300 kilometers. And so when you're looking in this large an area, it's very helpful to be able to focus in our efforts. We're also working on monitoring efforts in order to better understand, get the baseline data of what debris is already washing up on our shores. Since the debris that came from the tsunami could be any number of things, we want to understand better what's already happening, because it could be that the way we're going to detect tsunami debris is by noticing a change either in the quantity or in the composition, so either how much or what is coming ashore. And by noting that difference, we'll be able to detect tsunami debris as it comes on. And we already have these programs in place in many places, but we're looking to expand them as well with partners. I know that MCF will be speaking about their monitoring program, which is a great step forward in that direction. And then we're also working on planning and preparedness on a regional level. We've established an assessment and response framework, which is designed to be used at a regional level because the response is going to be different in different places. And so we want to build in the best local knowledge across federal, state, and local groups to make sure that we have a plan that works. Obviously, what's going to work in the West Coast isn't going to be the same thing that's going to be a good idea in Alaska. So we want to make sure we have a plan that works for Alaska, and then communicate on this. So the last piece, what you can do, and we are asking for help in this. First, we're asking people to report sightings of debris that they encounter to this email address that we've created specifically for this, disasterdebris@noaa.gov. While the way that we're going to detect what debris is there is going to be often based on good knowledge, whether that's from baseline surveys or whether it's just from somebody who's on that beach every day and knows what they expect to see and what they don't expect to see. So we're asking people to report that in through that. Additionally, we're asking people to volunteer, that always cleanups are ongoing, but also to establish monitoring programs where possible. And lastly, to stay informed. As we gain more information, we're going to be updating our website and keeping that up to date with the latest information. And it's a great place to see if you have a question that can be answered or to contact us with more questions. So with that, thank you very much, and pass it on to Dave.
Good morning. My name is Dave Gaudette, and I'm the Marine Debris Program Coordinator for the Marine Conservation Alliance in Juneau. And I'm going to continue where Peter left off. Peter talked about the North Pacific Ocean. I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about some currents and winds that are coming up into Alaska, and then I'm going to move into the monitoring program that Peter mentioned. We're a different organization. I just want to say quickly what we are and to give our qualifications for being at the table here. We're a nonprofit arm of the Marine Conservation Alliance, which is a group of North Pacific and Bering Sea groundfish, crab organizations, communities, and community development groups. And we were created to do cooperative research, and we've also done marine debris cleanups since 2003. Since that time, we've done more than 72 cleanups throughout the state, and we've picked up more than 2 million pounds of debris. And one of the things that makes us unique is that the MCAF does not itself go out. We don't have a team of people to go out and pick up the debris. We work with the local communities, and that's going to come into our monitoring program a little bit later. We work with the people that live there, the people that understand these areas. We've also conducted quite a few aerial surveys for some backgrounds. Quickly, this is where our experience has been. We've gone all the way from Ketchikan, all the way up through Kotzebue. The areas that are shaded in green, even though we've not done cleanups in some of those are areas that we've covered by aerial survey, photographs to try and document what the baseline debris is. And we also have some proposed projects. Again, what we do is we look for funding, we apply for grants, and then we take that and we work with the local communities to spread it out. The blue ones are ones that we hope to be working in, and those are areas that could be potentially impacted by some of this debris. Okay, I said I'm going to start talking a little bit more specifically about Alaska. Peter showed where the general current was coming across from Japan, moving eastward, heading for the North American coast. When it meets the North American coast, there's several currents. It divides up, obviously. And the two major currents that are of concern to us are obviously the Alaska current is going to hit the coast, and the current is going to start to bring it north and circle along the west coast, or the coast of Alaska, and then back out along the Alaska Peninsula. Another portion of it is going to go down to the California current. It is not. Another unknown is how this debris will divide up once it hits that coast. It could be dependent upon whether we're in La Nina, El Nino, anything like that. But once this current gets the coast, it's going to split. We don't know how much of the debris, what there is, which way it's going to go. This is just another view of the currents. And note that there is just a little bit of variation in the currents, what the current names are. But again, it shows that we've got an Alaska current. It's going to come over to the coast here, and the Alaska current is going to carry it from the southeast Alaska, up along Montague, and then out along Kodiak, and then the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Islands. This one here is a very explicit graph here showing the current is measured by sea height and by sea surface temperature. So we can see just how the current comes up, moves along the shore, and then moves into the Bering Sea at a later date. Again, we expect that as Peter mentioned, that a great deal of the debris is going to move with the current. It's going to move at the current speed, which is approximately 7 miles a day. But there's, as you mentioned, there's two kinds of debris. There's the debris that's going to be moved only by the current at approximately 7 miles a day, and then there's going to be what we call high windage debris. And this debris, you could characterize it as it's going to have a major portion of its surface area out of the water, and its movement is going to be affected a lot more by the wind than by the current, or probably a combination. This is a very busy graph. It is the only thing that I could find that really illustrated the point that I would like to make. Oh, sorry. These bars are all isobars. They represent storms in the North Pacific. And so this is a little difficult for me to see here, but a storm would start here and then track up, and then another one here and track up. You can see all these storms start well before they get to the coast, and the winds take that debris, take it right up into the area, probably Yakutat, Montague Island, Boar Point, and the Kodiak area. This is a graph that we got from Curtis Ebbesmeyer's website. Many of you probably have heard of Curtis Ebbesmeyer. He became famous, he's a retired oceanographer who became famous by tracking the rubber ducks, the hockey gloves, and the Nike shoes. And of course, he's made a career now. He's retired. He's made a career out of just marine debris. This illustrates a buoy that broke loose in Ginoza, Japan, and I believe the date is August 9th, 2006. And this is the simulated drift of the buoy as taken by currents, and also the difference with this projection is that they've tried to model in wind factors. But what's important is that this buoy broke loose on August 9th, 2006, and it showed up approximately April 9th, 2007 on the west coast. It showed up on, I believe it was Copalis Beach in Washington. The important part is 8 months. It took 8 months for this high windage object to make its way across the Pacific. So if we look at March 11th, 2011, 8 months was December 11th. So it is entirely possible that we are seeing these high windage objects as they make their way across. So what we were concerned about, as we've heard, we do not know the magnitude of the debris that is in the ocean. We don't know where it's going to go. As Peter mentioned, we already have marine debris out there, and it's going to be very difficult to try and tell what's from the tsunami, what's not from the tsunami. So we've started to talk about putting together a monitoring program. We're still in the process of trying to do that. And what we decided to do was work with our experienced contractors to go to the beaches that they know best, that they believe will get the debris. So what we've done is we picked the area of Craig, Sitka, Yakutat, and Kodiak. These areas were picked because we have the experienced contractors there, because we do have some baseline data there, and because these people are active beachcombers that know their beaches well. They are going to know if there's something different showing up. And that's essentially how we're going to have to tell whether this debris might possibly be from the tsunami. It's going to be different than the debris that normally washes up. So this is the heart of our monitoring program right here. And essentially we're going to be doing the surveys weekly for 12 weeks. I say weekly, but this is Alaska. We just looked at the storm graph. We hope to get out weekly. Some of these beaches are going to be accessed by boat, so it's highly likely that we won't be out there every time. But at least the beaches on Yakutat and Kodiak are accessed by the road system, so we should get some good data from there. The beaches, again, are selected by our experienced contractors so that they know the beach and they feel that those are the ones that are going to get the debris. They are going to monitor for radiation, and we're still in consultation with other groups to try and determine what the best method is for that. And I have to emphasize that we agree with what Peter said, and that radiation is highly unlikely based on the timing of the event, but nonetheless, We want to ensure the safety of our contractors, and we also want to collect data to show just what is there. But again, we're still in the process of trying to define exactly how that program will work. We're going to try again to do some baseline data. We're going to estimate. This is not a cleanup like we normally do. So they're going to try and estimate the weight weekly to try and show the gain. Again, that's another thing that we'll be able to compare, is the rate of gain of debris on these beaches faster than what we've seen in the past. And so if any of the debris might be mementos, again, we have to remember this was a tragedy. And these people's homes were just taken off the shore, moved in. We recognize that there could be some items that are going to be mementos, that people are going to want returned. I said it's not a cleanup program, but we've instructed our people to go ahead, take these home for safekeeping until we can determine what to do with those. And finally, there is the possibility, remote as it can be, that there might be some human remains. There have been occasions where athletic shoes have carried feet up. Once that foot is encased into that shoe and tied in, there was a case in Puget Sound in British Columbia where there's several, I think it was 8 feet showed up. Again, we've alerted people to look for that and to notify the authorities immediately if they find anything like that. So I have some photos also of the debris that we found. We've been in contact with all of our contractors, and these are some buoys that we have found up in the Yakutat area. Again, here's some writing on this one down here. We don't know exactly what it means, and again, it's very hard to tell if any of this is really from the debris, but these people have told me that this was unusual to see this many large buoys and this many of them at this time of the year. So they thought that this was an unusual event and may qualify as one for tsunami. This is just some more debris that we've collected in Yakutat. Again, it's been many of these large buoys, and then another a foam-filled buoy. Again, these are not used on the West Coast, but whether they're from the tsunami, we just don't know. And I do want to emphasize that in all the marine debris cleanups that we do get items from Japan, on both the North Pacific side and on the Bering Sea side. So it's not unusual that we have items from Japan, but we have never tried to quantify that. So this is something new for us. Again, one more. This showed up in Kodiak. Again, it's not anything that would typically be used on the West Coast. As part of our monitoring program, we're doing the same as NOAA, and we're trying to coordinate with NOAA, although it may not look like that at this point, but we plan to distribute posters. We also have a contact. We have our phone number, we have our my email address, and we have our website. So just to as a summary, we believe that the timing is right. Any high windage objects should be showing up based on the 8 months. And there are definitely some that are showing up that would fit the category of high windage debris that could be from the tsunami. The main body of the debris, the current laden debris, is still not expected to be here until 2013. So we're going to go ahead, do our monitoring program to look a lot for these high windage objects. I have to emphasize we don't know how many there will be, and it's going to be very difficult for us to say definitively that they are from the tsunami. We're watching the data all the time. We'll be in contact with NOAA and trying to determine what we will possibly do when the main body of the debris or the current laden debris shows up. And finally, you can track all that we know on our website. We intend to put any information we see. This here is the same graph that Peter showed. We have that up there. We have the tracking of the buoy that came from Japan to the West Coast. And I'm going to try and work out a method to summarize what we see in our weekly monitoring program and anything else. And you're welcome to look at it. You're welcome to give us a call. And it would be a great help if anybody can identify debris, take pictures. And when you take a picture, try and get the perspective and try and get anything that might identify it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Christian. Okay.
Thank you. I understand we're supposed to talk a little bit louder. Is that better? There's people online that are having a hard time hearing, I guess. Okay. Well, I work for the state of Alaska, and I'm the director for the Division of Environmental Health, and there are several programs within my division that are semi-relevant to this conversation, including food safety and sanitation. So we inspect all of the commercial food processed in the state of Alaska, especially seafood. So I'll be talking a little bit today about the state's role in evaluating the radiation impacts from the Fukushima nuclear reactor particularly. I'm going to move a little bit away from the debris aspect. Just to jump to a bigger aspect here, I wanted to briefly touch on the radioisotopes that people are concerned about. There's three in particular that you would want to think about if you're considering a food supply exposure from a nuclear power plant accident, and the three are listed there: iodine, cesium-134, and cesium-137. The half-life is an indication of how long it takes that item to dissipate by half, to be less radioactive by half. So it's just an indication of how long they're bioavailable, that they're in our environment and absorbable. And as the consulate has already said, there's really only one now that we're concerned about, or should have any concerns about, which would be cesium-137. The other two have pretty much dissipated and are no longer really available to us in the environment. So the state of Alaska and the Department of Environmental Conservation in particular did a risk characterization, which is similar to what the federal agencies did in this situation. We worked with the Environmental Protection Agency, NOAA, FDA, to decide if there were any risks to Alaskan fisheries and wild foods or human health to a degree. And from what we found from the data that's available, the answer is no. There is no concern to us that there is any radiation impacts in Alaska to our environment that we should be worried about at this time. So I'm going to go into some of the information we used to make that decision, because I'm sure people would like to know. There are several tools we had available to us. One of the most useful, or I guess most available, was the air monitoring information that EPA collected, and I'll go further into that in a second. There was some data collected about water, the marine waters, and surface waters in Alaska. There's been a lot of modeling done, as you've seen from previous presenters, about how the currents may have brought those radionuclides over to Alaskan atmospheres. And then there's different sampling of some terrestrial and plant species that's occurring. So I'll give a quick overview of those. First, the air monitoring data. The Environmental Protection Agency has a program called RADNet, and you can go to their website if you're curious about the data that they collected in Alaska. They had 5 sites where they were collecting that information. They have 3 that are permanently in Alaska, in Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau, that are there all the time collecting information. When this event occurred, they immediately deployed 2 more monitors to Nome, actually 3 more, sorry, to Nome, Dutch Harbor, and Juneau, added an additional one to Juneau. And that was deployed as soon as there was news of the potential concern from Japan. The highest level in the nation of cesium-131 was collected in the Dutch Harbor air monitoring site, but it was well below any levels of concern. It was at 2.8 picocuries per liter. So that information again is available on EPA's website. They update it regularly, so you can go and look at it yourself if you're wanting to get more information about the results that EPA has found. Once the levels even dropped lower than they were at that high point, they removed the temporarily deployed sites, and so we now are left still with the Anchorage, Fairbanks, and Juneau. Part of the RadNet program from EPA also tested milk in the Pacific Northwest, not in Alaska, but they did test samples of milk. That's part of their program, and drinking water, which I'll talk about in a minute. And that data, again, is available on their website. It did not show any levels of concern. For water, there are a few things I just wanted to highlight. First, there was, Japan, of course, did much monitoring of their environment, and it was found 30 kilometers from shore, or 18 miles approximately, that the radionuclides in the water were, they would meet our drinking water standards. So I'm focusing mainly on the marine water at this point. We wouldn't want to drink marine water for other reasons. But the point is that the radionuclides they rapidly and effectively diluted in the ocean environment. The point of that is, if the water is safe that close to Japan, and the point source of the nuclear event, you can be assured that the water 2,000 miles away in Alaska is most likely unaffected. The other monitoring that occurred for water by the RadNet program, they tested Anchorage's drinking water source. Actually, Anchorage did that itself. They collected water from a Klutma lake, and again found levels to be extremely low. The RadNet program tested the Fairbanks drinking water source, and again the levels were extremely low. And the Department of Energy has been testing Amchitka Island for a long time because of events that occurred out there decades ago, and their results are not showing any changes. This really, I'll just quickly go through this. It's just, you've seen enough maps, but this just shows you the distance, and you just have to think of the water transporting, almost 3,000 miles and having an impact on us. I'm going to shift into fish, because I know that's a big concern to a lot of people, and especially salmon. And this map will show you, this is what we know about salmon migration patterns. As you see, they hardly leave our environment. Of course, they go to the ocean, some quite far, but they are not getting over to Japan or anywhere near the 18-mile mark that we may want to consider. The map does not indicate pollock, but pollock has a similar pattern. They tend to not go beyond the Bering Sea shelf. And we have not seen any indication that they make it over to Japan, even though we have no concerns actually about fish from Japan either. So other fish testing that's occurred has primarily been happening around Japan for obvious reasons. FDA has been evaluating about 40% of all the seafood products that come into the United States from Japan. Thousands of samples have been tested, and that information again is available on FDA's website. There's a fact sheet in the back of the room that explains some of the work FDA has been doing to evaluate the safety of food products, more than just seafood, from Japan. And the majority of their samples show non-detect. There has been some cesium-137 detected in sand lance samples near Japan, but that's not a commercial species we're seeing here. This, coupled with the fact that salmon aren't even migrating to these waters, is an indication that there should be no concern with salmon in Alaska. They're not getting into waters that are near Japan, and even the fish that are from waters near Japan are not showing levels of concern. And that conclusion has been made by the Environmental Protection Agency, the Food and Drug Administration, NOAA, World Health Organization, the European Union. Sorry, there's a typo there, and of course the state has a consistent opinion with them. Just briefly to go into some other sampling efforts that are occurring, because I think people are curious and maybe don't know all that's going on. The North Slope Borough has collected samples of caribou and lichen and some marine mammals. The Aleutian Pribilof Island Association has collected lichen samples And again, the Department of Energy has collected fish and shellfish and sediment and other marine species from around Amchitka Island. UAF is also testing some caribou. Those results won't be available probably until midsummer at this point, but all those efforts are underway. The last slide I have is just to kind of briefly go over some potential data gaps. We're as a state, we're looking at those data collections that are occurring and evaluating their information as they come in. And if we feel there's warranted additional testing and monitoring, we're going to pursue that with our federal partners. Obviously, there's some longer living radionuclides that could be deposited over Alaska throughout the coming years, and that may impact some of our vegetation and the animals that eat those vegetations. So we're curious to see the sample results that come out of the studies currently underway, and if we think we need to do some more specific targeted sampling, then we'll be pursuing that. And that's really all I have. Dr. Volpert, I think, would like to add something else.
Thank you very much, Kristen and Senator Murkowski. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to add my welcome also. Apologize that these slides that I had did not load. Probably some of the built-in security that we all deal with these days, but I don't think that will hurt. You've heard the things that Kristen talked about. As she leads the Division of Environmental Health and I lead the Division of Public Health, there are a number of issues where our divisions, which are located in two different departments, both impact. And as Alaskans, you would be reassured with what you would hope, that there is very good and close coordination between the divisions in addressing the issues. And so as a part of that, some of the things that I say I think will serve to reinforce what you've heard now. Within public health, we have three programs that deal with these kinds of issues related to the tsunami debris, both the physical debris and the concerns about potential radiation exposure. One of those is our emergency preparedness program. One is our epidemiology section, which deals with things from infectious disease like tuberculosis to potential radiation risks in the population. And the third are the state laboratories, with laboratories here and in Fairbanks, with the virology lab, but here in Anchorage, we have the laboratory. And in the audience, we have Mr. Clyde Pierce here, who is the person in the lab here in Anchorage who has provided the information that's helped educate me and that I pass on to you. And really is the person dealing with radiation issues here, whether it's with many types of diagnostic imaging or this kind of a public health issue. We are a small state in terms of population, and so we do have just the one person, Mr. Pierce, who does it. Washington State has 25 people doing that kind of thing, but they have the Hanford Nuclear Works that they deal with as a state, and that is part of the demand that they have. But one of the things, again, I think that you would be reassured to know that as we deal with these kinds of issues, potential threats and concerns, that there's not only good collaboration between the state and the various appropriate agencies of the federal government, there also is across state jurisdictions, so that on this issue, as you've seen the maps, there is communication, there is collaboration with Alaska and our sister states to the south, Washington, Oregon, California, and across international boundaries, in this case being British Columbia. And so the individuals that deal with that do communicate regularly, do collaborate together, do meet periodically, and so there is a good coordination as we try to address concerns and potential threats to both Americans and Canadians that live along the whole northwest coast here that we have. As you heard, the radiation monitoring is done on a regular and an ongoing basis. The cesium-137 radioisotope is the isotope that is unique to the nuclear power plants. The 134 you do find more naturally. The The cesium-137 is the one that does have the long extended 30-year half-life that we heard about, but the biologic half-life is much, much less than that. It's a few days. So if you did have radiation exposure to the cesium-137, which would be what you would find from the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster there, the biologic half-life, if it got into animal forms, would be much less, would be a few days. We would certainly concur, from all we know, from all intelligence that we've pursued, that we do not see a likely risk to the safety of Alaska seafood, which is important both to all our diets and to our economy here in the state. There are small amounts of debris from the tsunami, as you've heard, that have been found, which may be from the tsunami. There have been the kinds of debris that we see. My wife and I and our little son at the time first moved to Alaska a little more than 50 years ago. We went to Dillingham. And one of the recreational things that you did was beachcomb, and actually hoping you'd come up with a glass float from the Japanese fishing fleets. The post office was a little more easy in those days, and I can remember mailing one to the physician who had kind of been my mentor and inspiration growing up in Washington, D.C. And we just put an address tag on it, and they mailed it, and as the postman delivered it, they said, "Phew, I'm glad we got rid of this." Because it reached there intact. But it just reflects that we here in Alaska, as you've heard, have seen this debris. Sometimes it's something we look for, something that we want, something that we decorate our homes with. Other times it's some of the unfortunate things that get into the oceans and that we don't want to see there.